So we are kicking off with Justin Sirotin of OCTO PD right now. And his presentation is called Using a Systems Approach to Build Your Business. Justin?
I am in a conference room that is big and empty and can get a little echoey. So I'm lucky enough to actually be in the office today, and there's other people here, which is like amazing. I think there's 4 of us in today, which feels like a momentous step forward in this.
I don't have a mask on, which just
strange way. I don't have a mask on, so I have it here.
But it's like you're working in an office.
I'm in an office. I have the doors closed, and I'm the only one in the room, hence the mask off. But we are fortunate enough to have a big space and a very, very tall ceiling. And the combination of the big space and the tall ceiling allows us to have people show up and be really spread out. So we've got, I think the total head count in here today was about 6 at one point, is what we peaked at, which felt really good. It was like this, it's totally transformative to the way that you feel about the work when you're not just sitting in your house trying to figure out how to solve problems by yourself. So what we built today is relatively high level, and I feel like the most, for me to sort of talk into a black square or a square with moving heads for an hour is probably not going to get the most out of this for you or for me. So I have a unscripted but semi-coordinated series of slides that will guide our content. But I would encourage you to please feel free to interrupt and ask questions, and do not hesitate to take us off of whatever theoretical path that I have built. I teach a class at RISD with 35 students that end up in a grid like this, and I'm more than accustomed to being taken off track by comments and questions. So I feel like that's going to be the best way. I don't know any of you other than a handful, and so things that are more pertinent to the information that you'd like to get out of this, things that are going to be more relevant or beneficial for you that maybe we've experienced or that we can talk to through experiences that we've had. I just want to encourage all of you to jump in and ask questions and turn this into more of a two-way conversation versus me sitting up here pretending to know everything and lecturing about what we've done. So I'm going to just share screen. Okay, so the title of this was Building a Better Business Through a Systems Approach, which is in theory what the grand topic is. In order to do that, we're going to sort of walk you through the gestation of this business, how we got to be where we are, what sorts of pieces of the puzzle that we found to be helpful for us. And this is obviously by no means a comprehensive strategy for creating any kind of business. It's really just a single point of reference that I hope is valuable to you and that you can then glean from and understand or take something away for you to be able to apply that to whatever it is that you're working on. So just to lead things off, I'll give you just a little history about us as a company. So I am unclear on the founding date of OCTO, which sounds a little bit strange, but it's absolutely 100% true. So I started as a life as a product designer. My degree says Bachelor of Arts in Industrial Design, and I took a job at a company that was called Item, which is now called Zymedica, and is based here in Providence. I spent 11 years working for that company and decided I wanted to build a product business. So I quit my job, started a product business, and could not make that product business in any way profitable. So within the first year or two, I ended up having to answer the phone when people called asking if I would support product development work. So this business was really started out of necessity. And that necessity was pay my mortgage, make sure that my young kids at the time had clothes. It was not built out of some aha moment of like, we're going to change how people do product development. We're going to reinvent the product development space. So it's partly why I really can't give you a start date. It's somewhere between the end of 2008 and the beginning of 2010 that you could sort of call the kickoff point for OCTO. It started as me by myself. I added an employee really quickly because the workload just started to grow. That employee became 2, 3, 4. We stalled at about 6 for a period of time and stayed there on purpose for about 3 or 4 years. And then we sort of flipped a switch in and around 2016, where we made I feel like the term pivot is like become completely and utterly overused. This was not a pivot. This was just a reaction to the world around us, where we started to listen to people who wanted to combine software with mechanical devices. And we said, okay, well, I think we can do that. I really like working on software projects. We are by degree and by training coming in through the physical product space, but the software world is really fascinating to me. And so we made a decision to start to entertain this idea of taking on software projects. That decision drove everything that's happened from that point until today, and has sort of turned us into the company that we are and steered us toward a future for where we believe we can go.
So is that what made you grow your team from 6 then? So like, as people start to think about how do I develop teams, you really needed to bring in those software experts or something?
Yeah, so fundamentally what happened was we got asked by AT&T to build a baby monitor. And the baby monitor was actually a baby monitor disguised as a healthcare device. And the healthcare device piece of this was all driven through software. And so what I did was I took a guy who'd never designed a piece of software in his life, but he's a good, solid thinker, smart guy. And I just said to him, I think you could do this. And I think we could build this piece of software, or at least design it. We couldn't actually execute it at the time, but we could at least design it. And I kind of had to talk him into it. I just said, let's just go for it. Let's see if you can pull this off. And if you mess it up, then that's a bummer. But I think we won't mess it up. And so we started down this path of just taking it as a chance and just saying, I think this is something that we can pull off. And it went very, very well. And so with that little bit of confidence and that little hint of momentum, we then started to add people to that team who actually knew how to do that. So the first guy who did it had never done it before in his entire career, had an industrial design background with no software knowledge whatsoever, but he understood enough about how to get someone to move from point A to point. If you think about what software really is, software is, that's the guy right there in that picture with his hands crossed. Software is really about building a super simple map from point A to point B. That's all software is. If you really imagine, like, what do you do in a piece of software? You have to get from one place to another, and you have a series of tools that allow you to make decisions to get from those two places. So if you're good at communicating, in theory, you should be able to define how software behaves. Then you learn a lot about best practices, coding, technology stacks, etc. But at its
just have to
root,
interject quickly, Justin. If you haven't met him already, I have a great new friend that moved, he and his wife moved here from New York last fall. He is part of the original Peloton team. And
oh, get out of here.
Yeah, the original founders, like when they were ready, reached out to him because they had worked with him before and said, we need you to come build our supply chain. And he's
Yeah.
like, but I don't have a background in
I
supply
don't have a
chain.
background,
And they were like, but you're going to figure it out. And he did. And I think that talking to him and learning about that story and kind of being
Yeah.
obsessed with the Peloton story and how he built out the supply chain and that last mile piece that is their signature, you know, that,
Mhm.
that people come to your house and set it up and everything,
Yep.
figuring that out and how they beta tested it in like a town in New York or New Jersey. It just reminds me of your origin story here. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
that.
So that's a great segue to sort of step one. So we have this fundamental belief inside this company that says that the degree that you have and the experience that you've built do not define the work that you can deliver moving forward. So when you look at our suite of people who work here, we have people doing jobs in our company that they never did before they got here. And that's a little bit on purpose. So I'm going to use the sort of shining example. So the woman in the middle in the orange jacket, in the yellowy orange jacket, we got a lot of orange jackets on this screen. In the yellowy orange jacket with what looks to me like Yosemite behind her, her name is Rebecca Lee. Her undergraduate degree is in chemistry from the University of Wisconsin. She then worked at Epic, which is a software company in Wisconsin that does healthcare software, which is a very big company. And she worked in sort of implementation and product management. She did that for 3 years out of school, got paid a ton of money, hated it, worked tons of hours. So she decided, unfortunately for her wallet, to go back to graduate school, and she chose to go to RISD for furniture design. I had her in my manufacturing techniques class at RISD, and she was peppering me with questions, just peppering and peppering and peppering. And I said, okay, this woman's clearly eager. I knew that she was an older student, and you could see in her work that she was not a sort of designer by trade. She was somebody who was trying to enter that field. So we struck up a conversation, and I had to convince her to not take a job at Microsoft. And the way that I convinced her was, if you go to Microsoft, you're going to be one of tens of thousands of people, and your ability to make a mark on that company is going to be minuscule for years, for potentially decades. You come work for our company, and your ability to make a mark in our company is going to be immediate. And if you don't like it, you could still go get that job at Microsoft. So we offered her some ridiculously lower pay than she'd been making at Epic, because she was overpaid as a 25-year-old in a software company. And thankfully she took the job. So undergraduate degree in chemistry, graduate degree is in furniture from RISD. She runs our entire research group. She engages at the very early stages with all of our customers, because if you think about what is chemistry? Well, chemistry is scientific method. It's about being really regimented in the way you collect data, and about really regimented in the way that you understand what that data means and how you look at the world. Combine that with furniture, which is sort of this esoteric fashion business, and you make for this really unusual background that when you plop somebody like that into ethnographic research, customer reviews, customer interviews, it works flawlessly. And I've been around a lot of professional researchers who come out of sort of classically trained research in our field, and she is so by far the best version of that, because she doesn't come from it, and she's willing to sort of blend together the creative piece as well as the human aspect of it and the scientific method that goes with it. And then you layer on top of that her software experience, and now you can drop her right into big, complex platform solution softwares, and you can say, okay, let's go figure out what's wrong here. And that is an example of how we look at building the right team, which is not so much about what that person's pedigree says or their degree program or how they've built their experience, but really about what they're passionate about, how they present themselves, what their other interests are outside of their work, and how all of those can sort of flow together into into a productive person, and then we sort of help direct those people into areas where they can be successful in our projects for our clients. And that little example goes for almost every single person on the screen. So the woman up to the left of her in the sunglasses, she has a painting degree. She designs software. The guy leaning over his bike like this, he has some random weird degree from Hampshire College, and he leads our UX work. And it's something that I have come to really fundamentally believe in, that building a team is as much about enthusiasm, personality, and a willingness to learn continuously, and more so than it is about the specific skills that somebody walks in the door with. And mind you, we're a bill by the hour company, which means the only way we make money is if one of these people can contribute meaningfully to a project, which means we take these risks with every person we bring on, because so often they come in without a classical background in the space that we plop them in. And we're sort of, yeah.
How do you like then decide who the best fit? I mean, how do you hire for a position? Like if you needed a software developer and you knew that was the hole, how do you pick someone?
So the first place that we pick them from is we ask around, and we look for people who other people believe in, first and foremost. And then we interview them multiple times and with lots and lots of team members. So I don't just sit at a table with somebody and have a dialogue and decide. I'll talk to them first. If they pass the chuckle test with me, then I just leave and I bring in multiple people from our team and sit with those interviewees and say, okay, well, do you think this person's going to fit with what we are as a company, first and foremost? And do you think that they have the skills to contribute? And if the answer to those questions is yes from the team, then we move forward. If the answer to that question is no from the team, then we stop. And because at the end of the day, I own the company. It sounds strange, but I don't actually have to work with most of our team one-on-one. I have to sort of sit in a place where I look at all the pieces of the puzzle and make sure that we're headed in the right direction. But at the end of the day, the guy holding the kid in the ski goggles, he's a developer. He has to make sure that he can communicate really clearly to the woman in the sunglasses because she's the software designer. If those two don't get along or don't see eye to eye, my opinion's irrelevant. So even if I think he's like the greatest thing on earth, if she comes back and is like, I can't even talk to this guy, then we're done before we start. So that's how the vast majority of this has come together. It's really trying to put those decisions back into the team members' hands to make sure that they're comfortable with whomever it is that's coming in the door. And we're still really small. You can see that list. We got 15 people. So when you're still this size, personality is everything, because there's no hiding in a company of 15. So that's how we've handled this. And so what that's done for us is allowed us to build a team that has a significant amount of flexibility, because no one in here is a true specialist. Even if they're a developer, they're a developer across a variety of different platforms that allows them to develop applications in different spaces. If they're a designer, they design across a variety of different segments that allows them to deliver that at a high level across a series of different verticals or segments. So to me, the only reason that OCTO exists, which is why COVID has been such a struggle for me personally, and why it's been such a struggle, why today was such a nice day, is that I look at the reason why you build a company like this as creating a community of people whom you are eager and interested in spending lots of time around. And when you lose that aspect, where you aren't able to physically spend that time in the same place and have those conversations over the lunch table, this becomes a job very, very quickly. And that idea of this being a job where a customer comes in and says, hey, we have glasses, can you redesign them, isn't all that interesting to me. Because I might as well just I could go take that job somewhere else and not worry about all the rest of this stuff. So the whole notion of creating a community of people that truly are interested in engaging with one another and engaging in solving problems together, at the end of the day, that sort of becomes the reason why this company exists more than any other. And so we as a group have had to come to grips with how we address that over the course of the last 8 months, and how we will continue to address that as we move forward. One of the things that we're considering is moving. This sounds crazy when I say it out loud, but it's true what we're thinking about. So we right now have a big loft space, right? Big tall ceilings. It's very bright. We got lots of lighting. It's awesome. It's not very expensive, but we're thinking about moving the entire company into a big house. And the reason why we're thinking about moving it into a big house is because it will make the feeling of coming to the office more comfort driven and less business office driven. And this notion that people will come into a living room, set up their desks in a living room, have a real kitchen, a bathroom with a shower, maybe some bedrooms upstairs that if somebody wants to crash there, they can, will completely transform the experience of going to work versus this experience, which is shared bathrooms outside, big long hallway, 100 businesses in here, a big parking lot out front. And all around this notion that if this becomes a job like every other job, then you're just doing it for a paycheck, and this isn't worth it. No one ever gets paid enough to go through the challenges that we all go through in this line of work, where you are taxed mentally, physically, emotionally, every day. So that's where we're headed.
Okay, I have one more question, and then we can move. But what about then the idea of work-life? Well, obviously, your staff seems very outdoorsy, like they're all fully engaged in living life. But if work feels like going home, does that have a negative impact on their productivity?
I hope not.
Yeah, exactly.
I hope not. I mean, I think that work-life balance in a creative field is always really difficult for everybody, because anybody who works, and when I say creative field, like we work in this technical creative field. So we have engineers and we have designers all working in the same space. We all still work in the creative field. Our job is to create stuff that is net new. And that is a very challenging place to work when you are trying to drive a work-life balance, because we all know what this feels like. You get engaged in something that sort of confronts you with some problems that you're trying to solve, and it is very challenging to step away from that. So we do our very best to provide staff with massive amounts of vacation time, push them to actually take that vacation time. We add in holidays across the entire year. We close the office. We just closed the office for 5 straight days because we weren't taking vacation time. We closed around the Columbus Day holiday. We closed Friday. We had Saturday, Sunday, Monday as a holiday. Tuesday we closed in an effort to just push ourselves away from our work, because truly working from home has caused all of us to not stop. And it's just way too easy. Your laptop's just sort of sitting over there at your house. So the hope is, by bringing a home to the office and an office to the home, that we aid in the transition away from where we are today. And B, I expect that people will not show up that much. I expect that we're going to be in a place where people can work from home or come into this office and work from this office, and trying to build a more intimate, comfortable setting for that to happen feels right to all of us. So I don't know. I don't have any idea if I answered your question.
I agree with you 100%. And as someone who tends to build communities and places like, you know, I say about the hive in the mill, I created a place in which I wanted to live and work.
Yeah.
So everything you're saying completely resonates with me. And I think like, that's why District Hall is so great. So, you know, people do still need to get out and interact, and, you know,
Yeah.
having that free public lounge or the private meeting rooms and event space when you need it, that has been really rewarding for me when I go in once or twice a week to have in-person meetings. It's nice. It's nice that Shaheen, who's our director of Cambridge, is on right now. And he's been living in Vermont because we're all working virtually right now, especially them, because they work in the CIC Cambridge space.
Yeah.
So he had his first meeting in months with his team. You were literally beaming, Shaheen, like
Yeah.
on Zoom calls. 'Cause, like, it was like, my people, where they're back.
It's true.
So
I
I'm
think there's
big,
also this acknowledgement about all this that's like, we're all making it up as we go. And we're making it up as employees, we're making it up as managers, we're making it up as partners with customers, we're all making it up as we go. And this sort of idea that you're going to go through this process and not stumble around a little bit is impossible. And so having that dialogue with ourselves to just say, hey, look, like that, for example, that closure that we went through, like I just kind of threw it out there and I said, what if we just shut down for 5 days? Now, the crazy thing that we did was that was in the middle of our very first ever Kickstarter, which we'll get to at the end of this. We were in the middle of our Kickstarter and we still said we have to just turn this off for 5 days. The Kickstarter will survive. And as it turned out, it survived. And we came back on Wednesday of that week and nothing blew up. And we went back to our days and everybody got this 5-day break. And it was as much for me as it was for the team, right? It was as much for me to say, I gotta turn this off for a few days. And if I'm gonna turn it off, why don't we just all turn it off? Then there's nobody feels like they have to carry the burden for somebody else being on vacation. If we all shut it down together, then it'll either incinerate while we're away or it'll be fine. And,
I did it this summer because this team, the Providence team, we pivoted. Again, a word that's overused, but we did pivot very quickly in that first week in March to virtual. And the Providence team and I was new leading them, and they were amazing, trusting me through that. Fortunately, I was kind of disruptive the first 2 months, so they were already agile. And but they worked so hard for months, and then finally summer came, and I'm like, all right, like if you want to take Fridays off, take Fridays off, or finish up early at the very least, because we need to recalibrate, recharge, reset, and that was super helpful. And they didn't have to, like, you know, I said, you don't have to take a personal time off. Like you've deserved, you've worked more than, you know, so. I think that way of thinking, again, like we can't go back after this. And it's up to us to continue to have these conversations. And, you know, and I think empowering our team members to say it's okay. Like I'm now in the place, and what you said, I think we're coming out of it, and I'm saying, okay, with the election going on and everything, I have to take care of myself because I have to be fully present for the team and for my kids, right? So I'm really trying to promote, right, Shaheen, like take our meeting on a call outside. You know, let's figure this out so we're not burning out. And again, I loved what your question, Amy, and so many people have said to me over the decades, like, how do you do all that you do? And it's like, well, my work and my life aren't really separate because I'm a creative in my own way, right? So it's always there. And I you know, it's a world that's interconnected. I love your idea of that. You should check out, if you haven't heard of it already, I know you live in Jamestown, Lucky Dog Resort. Have any of you heard of that? She's the coolest. And I love what they've done. And it reminds me of your idea for you. Not that you guys are dogs, but what a cool business she's created.
Okay, I'm going to keep going or I'm going to run way out of time. So the second thing that we've very consciously done with the way that we've built this business, which is again slightly counter to what I learned in my first business. So any of you who are familiar with Zymetica as a company, Zymetica started as a design agency that was multifaceted. We did work from a lot of categories. The two partners whom I'm still quite close with, who are brilliant guys, made a decision after I left but very shortly after I left, to take what I would argue is the largest risk that I have ever heard any business owner take, which is they fired 2/3 of their clients. And they focused on 1/3 of their clients that were in a single sector, which was the medical device space. And they rebranded the entire business around that one group of people, and they grew like crazy into that sector. What we have done, sort of contrary to that strategy, is attempted to build an intentionally balanced portfolio that allows us to wander between types of projects, from experiential to physical product to digital product to combined objects. And we've done that because I am inherently restless. And this idea that you're going to focus and work in one area is like torture in my own mind. So this ability to sort of walk between them helps sort of keep the team engaged in a variety of different types of activities. It also has this unplanned benefit, which is as areas grow and have resource capacity challenges, other areas will shrink, and we are then able to backfill with resources that we have, and those ebb and flow throughout the year. And I would argue that balanced portfolio is the only reason we got through April, May, June, and July without laying any of our staff off. It's just because we were able to shuttle people across from one type of project to another. Because we have a team that's cross-platform, can work in multiple sectors, we were able to just bias our activities into places where we had work and push people around the various projects to allow us to stay in business through what was otherwise a pretty scary couple of months. So the portfolio that we've now built spreads across software, which you can see down in the lower left and towards the middle. We work a lot in the industrial markets. We do consumer branded goods like this, which you can see here. So we built the Shack eyewear brand, as well as experiential products like what you see in the middle, which are 2 collaborations that we've had with Tellart, a local company, as well as a digital experience that we built for a big European multinational conglomerate. And what that has built for us is this sort of idea that there's not a lot of things at this stage that we haven't seen or come across. So when a client walks in our door and says, hey, do you think you can help us with X, Y, or Z? We're typically able to pull something out of our bag of tricks and say, you mean like something like this? And they go, yeah, kind of like that. And then we're able to make that leap between what we're working on today and what they're asking us to do, because we have worked pretty hard to build a balanced and multifaceted portfolio of types of projects. The downside to this is it makes it really hard to sell the company someday, because nobody really wants to buy this, right? Which we're not, the company's not for sale, but you do have some theoretical idea in your head that says, well, what if somebody did want to acquire this company? Well, who are we? And they look at us and they can't really put that sort of label or definition over us. And at this stage in our business, we're just fine with that. That this notion that we're trying to be some niche player in a big category with an expertise that's really finite is not something that's interesting to us. It's not interesting to me. And so we have chosen to stay broad in the types of work that we do. So all this sort of leads back to this idea of adaptability. And I feel like adaptability is this term that we just sort of throw out, and it's become a little bit of a throwaway term in the business jargon space, where you've said, well, how do you create adaptability within a company? And I actually think it's not, I think adaptability is actually quite tangible. I don't see adaptability as this philosophical term as much as a thing you can design your company to actually do, to physically be adaptable. And I'm going to attempt to describe it, and I probably will do a lousy job. So feel free to challenge me on this notion. But the way that we have built adaptability with our company is we have intentionally put people into product development projects that make them slightly uncomfortable. We have asked them over the course of the last decade to work on things that they have never seen before. And we have challenged them to take the time to learn about whatever category we are working in enough so that they can be credible and deliver a high value outcome. So I will give you a very good example and something that one of my employees loves to say, which is, so we designed this baby bottle. So this is a baby bottle. I don't know if you can see the logo there, for a company called Baby Brezza. They had never been in the baby bottle industry before. And we created this bottle, which has the nipple and the collar are all one part. The baby bottle has got this massive wide mouth, which makes it really easy for a parent to clean because we have less parts. It's easy to assemble, to manage, to deal with in the middle of the night. And we leveraged knowledge that we had of the space. We had already worked in the infant feeding space. We knew the space, but we had never been able to build a baby bottle from the ground up. We always started with a foundation, and we were asked to build on that foundation. So the guy who designed this baby bottle, not only does he not have kids, but he doesn't even spend any time with any people who have kids. He's just a really intelligent, capable, competent person. And so what he did is he just immersed himself in this idea of what it means to have kids. We had a team of people who then went out in the field and validated ideas that we brought to the table. But fundamentally, what we did is we put a designer, in this case, and an engineer who worked on it, in a position where they were forced to just absorb as much information as is possible in order to be able to even conceive of what this product might be and understand the pain points of the customer and be able to build a solution that met our clients' needs, met the market needs, and delivered a quality result. By taking somebody like Liam, whom I mentioned before, and shoving him into software, like taking somebody who doesn't have kids and shoving them into the design of a baby bottle, by taking a team who'd never built a sort of branded experience for Shack Eyewear and just believing that they can do it, and then providing them with the opportunity to learn and succeed, means that when you hit what we hit in March, the team is relatively well prepared for the idea that they have absolutely no idea what's coming, and that's kind of okay. And so I tell the team here every day that I can, we are a business that has visibility just past our nose. That's as far as we can see, because whenever we walk into a project, we don't know the answer when we start. We only know the questions that we're being asked. When we walk into our business, we can only forecast about 8 weeks in advance. So the entire business that we live in is one of a lack of visibility, which requires everybody here to be adaptable. So I feel like you can absolutely force adaptability into an organization by consistently being willing to put people into uncomfortable positions and then supporting them through the process of making mistakes and coming up with solutions to meet whatever needs that they're trying to meet. So we entered COVID with a project that we'd been working on for quite a long time, which was a bicycle bag, which I should have a sample of here in front of me, but I don't have it, that we started actually in 2018. We came up with this idea that we wanted to build a product business that spanned outside of OCTO as the core company. That idea was driven by this notion that we could build our own client, we could design our own client, we could spin off the client, and then we could do design and engineering work for that client and stand that company up on its own. So the logo that you see down there at the bottom is that Route Werks logo. That's the brand that we spun off. In this slightly odd twist of fate, I don't know that we would have ever launched that brand had we not been confronted with the business challenges of the last 8 months. Because we're a design for hire company and a design by the hour company, we constantly prioritize our clients over our own internal project. When our billings collapsed in April, May, June, we diverted a lot of our resources into just creating this product that we had been actually working on for a few years in the background. And it allowed us to meet with the market need, build a product that we could put out into the world, and we launched it on Kickstarter in September 2020. So what we designed is a cycling accessory. It's a bag that goes on the front of your bicycle. That bag has a series of features that are unique to bicycle bags, which is a quick release on-off, a technology mount right on the lid, and easy access while moving on your bicycle. Those are the 3 key features that we built. It's got a myriad of other smaller features that allow it to stand out within this space. But we, as I said before, we went into COVID without, we as a company did not lay off any of our staff, and we did not cut anybody's salaries. And part of the way that we justified doing that was we said, we're going to effectively double down on our own capabilities and our own knowledge, and we're going to build our own business that we can spin off during COVID. So this was launched, as I said, September 22nd. We raised $291,000 in 30 days on Kickstarter, which far exceeded any of our expectations. We did approximately 1,800 units in sales. And we are now facing the real challenge, which is, okay, that worked better than expected. Now, how do we stand this business up on its own so that it can start to grow without our team's constant attention? So we have hired our first contract employee who started on Monday, whose job is to handle customer service. He comes out of the cycling and adventure space, and he works for REI today. And our goal is to allow this company to now take its own path, grow in its own direction. We maintain strategic control. We maintain R&D, manufacturing, and the control of the product roadmap. And we build a company that is of our own making, that we get to double dip with financially. So for our business, let's say, use this as an example. We build this product for the Shack brand. The Shack brand takes 100% of all the profits from this idea and puts it back into that company. And our metric of success is them coming back and hiring us to do the next one. With this business, the idea is we're going to not only stand the business up using our own intellectual property and our own capabilities, but then we're going to have a piece of the profits that this company generates over the time that it's alive, and we're going to get paid to do the R&D work from this company's revenues. So I titled this slide "Taking Risks" because this is a bigger risk than I even imagined before we started. I kind of didn't appreciate the risk when we got going. And not until the Kickstarter was successful do you start to really appreciate the risk of bringing to market a business model that is fundamentally different than the one that we're in today. So we're a fee-for-service company, work an hour, get paid for an hour. This is a product business, which means capital is required to buy inventory, to sell goods, to generate capital, to buy inventory, to sell goods. Couldn't be more different in their models. And we believed in this idea, and we are at early days with putting it together, and hopeful that we can make this theoretical idea work of creating our own customer and then cultivating that customer into a successful business that we can grow into something. Hopefully, if this is successful, this becomes bigger than OCTO by revenue. So we took this chance. I'm going to say, like we usually do, knowing just enough to be dangerous and not enough to really be able to think about the consequences of our decision. Because probably had we thought through all of the consequences of our decision, like many of the projects that we take on, we probably would have said, this is crazy, we shouldn't do this. But here we are, we're in hip deep at this point, and we haven't broken anything yet. So we're gonna just keep going. And step one was build a successful Kickstarter and don't lose money on the Kickstarter. We can tick that box. Step two now is deliver the Kickstarter product and don't piss off 1,800 people. If we can get to the next milestone, then it's okay, figure out how to stand the business up and let it be sustainable unto itself. And then from there, we'll figure out how we actually grow it into something meaningful. So I don't know of many design agencies who have tried this. I didn't borrow this business model idea from somebody else. I've been thinking about this for about 5 years, and it took us that long to come up with a product idea and then a strategy that we could implement, and one that wouldn't break the bank, that we were all enthusiastic and excited about. So so there it is. And anyone who wants to learn more about it, send us a note after, and we can happily give you more information. We're really excited about it. We're actually going on a company bike ride on Friday afternoon. Tomorrow afternoon, it's gonna be such a nice day. We're going on a company bike ride up the Blackstone River path. And everybody who has worked on this project is just gonna go ride their bikes for an hour and go home on a Friday, which hopefully will be pretty fun. So I have accidentally turned something on here, and now I can't. I have to stop. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. So where are we headed? So all of this then sort of rolls back into this idea of what it means to build a system. And if you step back from what this idea is, a system, as I see it, is a series of individual parts that all have their mission, that all have their tasks, that all have their expertise, but are all knowledgeable and interrelated in a way that allows each individual sector of the business to benefit from the learnings and the direction taken from all of the other segments of the business. So in our consulting world, we plunk this idea of product strategy and stakeholder needs right in the middle of our system in all cases. So if we're designing this, we've got a series of stakeholder needs and we've got a product strategy. If we're designing this, we have the same thing. But in order to make any of these work, we have to include all aspects of the company that we are working for, or in the case of Route Werks, the company that we're building. And so that then sort of drives who you include in the process of creating the product, the service, or the business. You know, where I feel a lot of companies fall apart or fall short is this notion that you can build successful companies by focusing on one of these aspects. We're going to be a marketing-driven company, or we're going to be a product-driven company, or an engineering-driven company, or a research-driven company. And the reality is those that are truly successful are the ones that have figured out how to thread the needle between all aspects of these pieces of the puzzle. And then in the center of all that, they have their strategy, their stakeholder needs, and the products that they deliver, whether those are physical products, digital products, or services, it doesn't actually matter. So if you're a bank, you have the same problem as if you're making a set of glasses. And so what we are, you guys are all guinea pigs for this. What we are trying to figure out how to express, because this is something we've believed in for a very long time, but we've never really outwardly spoken about it or marketed it or attempted to bring our clients into this sort of conversation. But it's something that we've believed in for a very long time, is that successful businesses figure out how to communicate really well between the various verticals that live in silos inside of those companies. And the bigger the company gets, the harder this problem is to solve. So we work with many multinational, multi-billion-dollar corporations. And any of you who've had experience with that know there's a finance department, and the finance department is looking at spreadsheets, and there's a sales department, and the sales department's looking at spreadsheets, and they very rarely talk to one another. And so we, as this sort of amoebic group of interested, curious individuals who live in the middle of all this, are doing everything we can to say, okay, if you want to build this, how about we bring somebody from finance and operations into the creative process of understanding how we're going to make glasses in China and deliver them to US customers through an e-commerce portal for a brand that doesn't exist. And the notion that a bunch of designers can sit around by themselves and figure all that out, to me, is nonsense. So we work very hard to drag, in some cases, disparate types of people into the projects that we work on, to force them, just like we do to our own staff, to force them to look at a problem that they otherwise think is somebody else's job. And if we can do that really successfully, we're able to get people to come together around a concrete set of needs. And hopefully, if this continues to go as it has, build things that are more and more productive for our clients. And in the case of Route Werks, hopefully build a business that's more and more productive for us as a team. So this is sort of become our little beacon that we are headed toward. And we're doing everything we can to, in some cases, in most cases, convince, especially our bigger customers, of the value of bringing people whom you otherwise never talk to, maybe don't agree with, maybe don't even understand, into the process of creating the future product strategy and products themselves, in order to make sure that those deliver on the promise of whatever brand that we're working for. Well, hopefully this was informative, educational, interesting. It's always hard to know, especially when you're not in the same room. The next time this happens, we can do it here in the office.
In your house office?
In our house office, maybe. And we have tons of cool props. We got all sorts of fun things here. It's just very hard to show them when you have to do it through a screen.
All right. Well, thank you.
Always
so much
appreciate talking
and,
to you.
Yeah, thank you.
setting it up.
And feel free to reach out if you have any additional questions.